on the street is you want to go to grad school. Oh, friend. I get it. I understand. I'm not here to say no. I am here to say be smart. And this is a question I get all the time, right? About, Kinkella, what should I do for grad school? I'm applying to grad school. And right now, we happen to be in mid-November, which is where all kinds of applications are going to start to become due. And so this just feels like the right time to talk about how to apply to grad school. Now, there is so much here that I think step one, before we even go into like, oh, is it a master's or a PhD and all this kind of jazz, it's why? Why? Why do you want to go to grad school? Think about it, right? This is important. Dude, it's the whole ball of wax. I got the ball of wax right here for you. Here it is. It's kind of disgusting. It's a ball of wax. But you need to know why, because it gives you that impetus to go forward. And what I do find is so many of us, when we think about going to grad school, we haven't really thought it through. You know, it's just like, oh, I'm good at school. I want to keep going to school. I find research interesting. No, you need to think of grad school as a means to an end. It's a stepping stone to something else. It's not the end-all be-all, right? You don't want to get a PhD just to get a PhD. You want to get a PhD in order to do whatever it is you need to do. So it takes a lot of forward thinking, this whole grad school thing, right? So that is step one. As many have heard me say before, you have to do the swim in Lake U. You have to really sit and think, what is it that, honestly, it's like, what is it that I want out of life? It really is. It really is that important and that focused. And because of that, you want to have these conversations with yourself when you're relaxed, when you're sort of focused on sort of the world around you. Sometimes, like, if you're jogging or this kind of thing, you know, you might have this time in your day when you can just think for a while and kind of let your mind wander, right? Okay, should I get an advanced degree or not? Don't think about this when your mom's yelling at you to get out of the house, right? You want to do this in a relaxed moment. So step one, should I get an advanced degree in the first place? And if so, why? What endpoint am I going for, right? Now, in order to be successful in a master's or a PhD, you need to have tenacity. You need to have stick-to-itiveness. If you don't have that, forget it. If you're like, well, I guess, maybe I could get an advanced degree, I don't know. Stop. You're not going to make it. You have to have a laser focus in terms of, I want this, I need this, this is part of my soul that I need in order to get here. If you have that kind of, like, I need to be in this world kind of thing, then we're talking. That's what I want to hear. All right, I want to see both feet in, or you're just never going to make it. Sorry, dude. I find that my radar, my spidey sense, is usually pretty crappy on a lot of things. Like if everyone's watching a movie and it's totally obvious that the girl's the killer, at the end, when there's the reveal, I'm like, what? She was the killer? And everyone else is like, yeah. But when it comes to grad students who are going to make it or not, I'm pretty good. That's where my spidey sense works. I can tell, usually pretty early on, if somebody has the wherewithal to do it. I can just kind of see it. And it's in how they present themselves and what they talk about. If they're really unsure about what they're going to do, I just like archaeology because I just like it, you're not going to make it. But if they're like, yeah, I really want to work in the Maya Classic period because I'm really curious about these smaller pyramids. There you go, right? And you want to be sure that going into a graduate program, this is your baby. Meaning, this is something you're just so interested in and you think is so cool that you will read the fine print of anything because you just think it's cool, right? It can be the most arcane, odd thing, but you got to think it's cool. And it's got to be part of your soul, right? And that's great. If it is, you're going to be fine. Now, I guess the second question is, Kinkella, should I get an MA or a PhD? Should I get a master's degree or a PhD? And honestly, it just depends. They don't work in a scaffolding way. Most people think this. It's not you get a master's, then you get a PhD. It's much better to think of it as you get either a master's or a PhD. Which one's better? Totally depends on that endpoint. Remember what you want, like what you need out of this. So actually, people ask me this. It's such an open question. So what's better, an MA or PhD? I'll give you an answer just because people want it. A master's is the better degree between the two. Everything else being equal, which it never is. A master's degree, the reason why I say that, we want to think time-wise. A master's degree is going to take about 3 years out of your life. A PhD is going to take about 8 years out of your life, depending, give or take. But that's the world you're looking at. That's the years. A master's degree, if you get it, you can stay a sane human. And what I mean is you can maybe like take classes at night, or they might work around your schedule, or maybe you can still have a job. Could happen. PhD, you got to become a freak. You got to be in that world for a while. You can't hold a full-time job and get a PhD at the same time, this kind of thing. You have to kind of delve into that at least for a handful of years, at least for the first 3-ish years or so. So realize that there's a time commitment difference. At the end of a master's, you write a master's thesis. Mine was about 70 pages long. At the end of a PhD, you write a dissertation. Mine was, I think, 370 pages long or something like that. So I know just the page numbers, you're like, I could never do it. You can. It's actually the least of it. You'll be able to do it. This is double spaced. Got all kinds of graphs and charts in it and stuff. Got a huge bibliography and all that kind of jazz. So don't worry about the page limit situation. You'll be able to do it. What matters is it's that end game thing. Why are you doing this? For what? You'll be able to write the thing. Now, for a master's, you will have a choice. Can you do the test at the end? Sometimes there's a series of tests. Or write a master's thesis. Always write a master's thesis. Always. Because it's much heavier. It gives you more street cred. Right? I always ask if somebody has a master's degree, I'm like, did you write a thesis? Because it sets you up for your future, for your endpoint so much better. Don't just take the tests. Unless you, for some reason, you just have to. Like, write the master's thesis. It's so important, right? So, in the PhD world, you're going to have to write a dissertation. Oh, and actually, with that scaffolding thing, sometimes people say, hey, but if I get a PhD, don't I get a master's along the way? Yes, but check this out. The master's that somebody gets as a terminal master's program, meaning they went to go get a master's, and that's what they want, and that's their end game. That master's is worth more than the master's they just throw you on the way to a PhD. So a bad move you could make would be that you try and get a PhD, but only end up with a master's. It's much better to focus on a master's from the beginning. Where do you go to get this stuff? Nobody will necessarily tell you this, but the truth is, especially in California, a state school like Cal State, Northridge, or whatever, a state school, that's where you go for master's degrees. State schools do master's degrees. UCs do PhDs. Now they'll say that, oh, we got a master's program at this UC, whatever, and then just don't bother. Don't think of it that way. When they say they have a master's program at a UC, see how many students are actually doing it. Not many. So think of it in that way. Think of it master's equals state school, PhD equals UC, and do think of it as two separate things. I am going here or here. You can save a ton of time if you do that swim in Lake U after you get your bachelor's and you realize that you must have a PhD, you go straight into the PhD program. You save so much time, right? You don't need to mess around with the master's. I took the slow boat. I did master's first, right? And then I went onward and got a PhD at a different place. I did the 3 years and then the 8 years. I know, it's insane. But sometimes there's certain moments where you just have to do that. Maybe you didn't do so well as in your bachelor's degree. Maybe your bachelor's degree is in something completely different than what you want to do your advanced degree in. There are reasons why people have to do that, but don't if you don't have to. So we've come all the way here to talking about master's versus PhD. Where to go? As I've said with other degrees, other times, and this sort of stuff, it's not about what U.S. News and World Report says, right? It is about the department. You have to look at the department. Do they have what you want, what you're interested in, what your baby is? I just love the Maya Pre-Classic or whatever. Do they have a person who teaches the Maya Pre-Classic? If they don't, it's not for you. For a graduate degree, the place you go matters more than when you're getting a bachelor's, right? That's what matters the most. The department itself. And on top of that, you're going to need an advisor, the person who kind of shepherds you through. It's like picking a parent. So this is very important, who the advisor is. And that advisor, you want them to have the same focus you do. Like if you're a Mayanist, you want them to be a Mayanist. But even more so, they have to see the world like you do. That's what matters. It matters more than anything else. Because actually, let's say I'm a Mayanist. It's important that my advisor is a Mayanist, but it's more important that they see the world like me. They kind of take the same angle in archaeology that I do. Because this is somebody, again, who's shepherding you through, who you are sort of becoming their de facto child, right? So you want to be in the same family.